$25,000. That's not the average price of a car or the average down payment on a home or even the average cost for a semester in college. These days, it can be the average cost for a wedding. Of course, it can be far, far more than that. Back with me now, Lance Roberts, Jamie Cox, and Rich Coppa. Rich, we were talking in the break about this. You were saying, people who spend $25,000 for a bar mitzvah.
So I know people are paying $40,000 to $50,000 for a bar mitzvah, and 2 years later, another one. So, weddings around here, $100,000. And I think the problem is people are thinking about the immediate time. They're not being disciplined about their future. It goes back to the last segment about college planning, too. You start early, and you have to forecast out and think, do I pay for this now? And what is the cost for my retirement in the future? How much longer do I have to work? What is that compounding $40,000 or $50,000 you're paying? You
have to have that long view instead of the short-term view.
Absolutely.
Lance, I do want to talk about marriage and getting divorced. Okay. And a lot of people out there, they get divorced. They don't even think about the financial consequences. They are huge.
Right. Of course, if you live in a joint property state, it's really bad when you have to cut all your assets in half, including your 401k plan. And really, honestly, divorce, just from a moral basis, should always be your very last option. Exhaust all your other options first. But, it's just a function that it is a financial disaster for people because generally, and what you're seeing right now, just saw a survey out yesterday, the divorce rate for baby boomers has risen by over 20% in the last 5 years. So in here, these people are very late age, heading into early retirement, now getting divorced, losing half their assets. Now what are you going to do for retirement? It's too late to recoup it.
And it impacts the kids too. It's not just mom and dad who gets done. It's also their children. Jamie, to you, what do you tell people who are your clients that come and they say, we're thinking maybe about getting a divorce, is that going to impact them? What do you say?
Counseling's cheaper. Much cheaper. We try to tell them, basically the same thing the other guests have told them, but what we tell them is like pushing the reset button. You basically delete everything that you've done up to this point, push the reset button, you got to start all over again. Unless you're extremely wealthy, it's usually a budget buster and a retirement buster for a lot of people.
And it's an emotional buster, for people. Yeah. It sets them back in so many ways. If there's any way to avoid it, you really should. I want to talk about the other end of the equation, though, getting married. Do you do the prenup? I just hate that whole idea. It sounds so not romantic to me. Rich?
Look, I'm a former attorney. I think a prenup makes sense in certain circumstances. Listen, it's not the best way to go into a relationship, but at the end of the day, you agree to agree. And it's no different than in a partnership and a business aspect. And it's a tough conversation to have, but I think when you get married, you have to have that conversation potentially and other conversations about credit histories. Budgeting, what your makeup is and the way you spend money versus your partner, and also have both people involved in the process, because the worst thing is when one person does everything, the other's oblivious, and that's what creates a problem, I think.
Lance, do you go along with a prenup?
I agree with everything you just said because, look, a marriage is a partnership, and it's just like going into business with somebody. Good documentation, good conversations, it builds good fences, and it creates that open expectation that I know what I'm getting into. The biggest two reasons for divorce are finances and sex. And the reason that most people wind up not having sex is because their finances are in terrible shape because they weren't communicating about them to start with. So understanding what you're getting into and whether you use a prenup or not, but having some type of agreement that you've sat down and worked through the process of will help that communication and responsibility for both partners and will make the overall relationship much healthier in the long term.
All right. If people just knew how much debt their partners had before they went to the altar, that would be such a great first step to having a happy marriage. I can't believe it. But Jamie, let's move on to planning for kids. What kind of planning, as you're getting ready to have children financially, should you be doing?
Well, I think you first need to determine whether or not you know what you're going to do for childcare. If you have both people working, how are you going to afford it? How are you going to afford to, keep you're going to let one person stay home? Are you going to are you going to have to pay for expensive daycare? You're going to have to decide those things right up front. Secondarily, you have to budget for things like diapers and food and clothes and all these type of things that you have no idea how much they cost until you already have the child. So when you're looking to have children, most people don't plan having children. They find out after the fact. So most of the time, and then if you had private school education and things like that, I mean, the money just adds up and adds up. But I would like to say, Gerri, the thing that I see among young parents, they want their kids to do everything. They want to overschedule them, have them in five sports and they can't afford it. They don't understand that, the kid needs to have something to look forward to, or else they're just going to be bored. You can't give them everything at 3 years old and expect them to want to have anything later on. So what I feel when I tell parents and try to counsel them is to be mindful of the fact that the children need to have, I think, just a few things to do, and that way they can learn what they like, as opposed to making them do ballet and piano and baseball and lacrosse. I mean, they do absolutely, they're not good at any of it.
And that goes back to communication. That goes back to the same conversation we had about getting married, not only about your finances, but what do you expect from your family? What do you want with regard to the lifestyle you want to provide to your children? How many children? What type of lifestyle? You want them in every activity? These are really important questions to ask, because can you afford it? Does your housing have to change? I mean, in some cases, people suddenly move. They're in a condo when they're married, they have a kid or two, and they need to move. And that becomes a financial burden as well. So these are the types of things that really need to be discussed. Communication is key, and forecasting, what type of lifestyle that you want for you, your marriage, and your children is really important.
All right, last word here, Lance, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, look, as a father of 4, I'll just tell you this. If you're ever thinking about having children, go babysit somebody's kids for the weekend, and it will guarantee to change your mind.
Oh, no, we can't end on that note. Kids are great. We're pro kids here.
Absolutely. Hey, like I said, I got 4. I love every one of them to death. But they are a huge responsibility financially, emotionally. It changes everything. If you like going out on the weekends and having a good time and going to nice restaurants, that's going to be over.
Well, and there will be returns later on. Lance, Jamie, and Rich.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your help today. You guys were great. Really appreciate your time. We'll be right back with my 2 cents more. Stay with us.